Hey everybody! Today I'm going to be doing my final presentation on legalizing physician-assisted suicide in all 50 states. Did you know that Florida has one of the largest elderly populations? According to an article by Christine Himes published in 2019 titled, "Which U.S. States Have the Oldest Populations?" In 2018, 20.5% of Florida's population was 65 or older. This makes physician-assisted suicide a relevant topic and shocking that Florida state legislators are not considering an aid and dying bill at this time. So what is physician-assisted suicide? It's essentially euthanasia, similar to animal euthanasia. When Fido can no longer walk, has no quality of life anymore, and you take him to the vet, and the vet typically recommends that you put him down. Some people call this the last act of love. It's showing our pets compassion and sympathy by performing animal euthanasia when they're suffering. It's logical and makes sense to relieve them from their pain, so it would be ethical and the right thing to do the same by having the options accessible for humans. As I mentioned before, Florida has an abundance of elderly. The U.S. Census Bureau wrote an article in 2012 that estimated that the population would increase 34% from 2012, and 32.5% of Florida's population would be 60 or older by 2030. The average suicide rate among Floridians 75 or older is higher than the rate in the 20 to 54 age group and the 55 to 74 age group. Natalie Corder wrote an article titled "Why a Terminal Illness Should Open the Door to Dying with Dignity," published in 2019, which says Florida has the highest percentage in the entire nation of people over the age of 65, and if any state should enact death with dignity laws, it should be Florida due to the elderly population and cancer mortality rates. Sean Marks goes on to say in an article published in 2008 that cancer patients have nearly twice the incidence of suicide than the general population. Pancreatic, lung, prostate, head, and neck cancers have the highest rate of all cancer types. As of right now, physician-assisted suicide can only be accessed in 10 states. That means if you live in a state without this accessible, you must travel somewhere outside of your own state. This means elderly patients not living in one of these states and that are unable to travel are forced to suffer with painful and debilitating diseases that drain their financial assets with costly medical care. Kevin Simmons goes on to say in an article published in 2018 that the most common justification cited for supporting a Death with Dignity Act has been the principles of autonomy and dignity. Losing autonomy is cited the most common reason for patients to choose physician-assisted suicide. 91% of citizens of Oregon and 87% of citizens of Washington cited it a reason of being a concern of theirs. So a solution to this problem would be to gain the support from more Americans and legalizing this in all 50 states across the board for patients that have less than 6 months to live or terminal. An article, "Life, Death, and Painful Dilemmas," written by Medscape, published in 2020, when asked should physician-assisted suicide be made legal for terminally ill patients, 55% of 5,000 doctors surveyed said yes, compared to 28% that said no, and 17% said it depends. This poll concluded that physician-assisted suicide has gained acceptance over the last decade. Nearly 7 out of 10 U.S. residents, which means 68%, agree that when a person has a disease that cannot be cured, doctors should be allowed by law to end the patient's life by some painless means if the patient requests it. So in conclusion, if it is so common and normalized to show mercy and compassion for our beloved pets when they are suffering, then why do we not have the same option accessible in all 50 states for humans? Physician-assisted suicide is only legal in 10 states. This prolongs pain and suffering, resulting in no quality of life for patients. Without it accessible, people become desperate and resort to drastic measures. So how can we make a difference? Sign petitions for the Death with Dignity bill in Florida and urge Florida state legislators for change. Natalie Porto says approximately 65% of Floridians between the ages of 65 and 79 support the physician-assisted suicide. With growing support and popularity across the board, we can do this. Legalizing physician-assisted suicide in all 50 states, especially Florida, the elderly will have the freedom to choose from a full range of end-of-life options, including physician-assisted suicide. The elderly will have a voice and no longer be forced to suffer in silence and pain anymore. Thank you.